Good morning. Oh, it's working. Good morning and welcome to All People's Church, Unitarian Universalist. My name is Marianne Clark and I am your co-celebrant this morning. Our Sunday service is a shared time of worship for all present as we gather for music, for spoken words, a time of reflection and inspiration as a religious community. Let us come together in a spirit of compassion and respect for ourselves and others attending this service. We especially welcome those who are visiting today. If you haven't yet done so, please sign in at the visitors table by the front door, where you can be placed on our mailing list to receive weekly emails and the monthly newsletter. Before we continue on to worship, there are a couple of announcements. One is to introduce our guest singer, Katya. Would you just stand up for a minute? Katya will be helping out with several of our musical pieces this morning, so that will be very, very nice. And this is from Joe, and this is about Don't Forget to Feed Me. I says, I know it feels like everybody has their hand out right now, but it's the second Sunday, and I am asking for help. Or don't forget to feed me. Even $1 helps. Please give if you can. If not, maybe next week is fine. See Joe Burnham for that. And finally, I'd like to introduce Mark Christian, who we're happy to welcome again to the pulpit this morning. Mark Christian is the third generation Unitarian Universalist. He has served UU congregations in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and in Tulsa, Oklahoma, as well as in Oklahoma City, where he was born and raised. He has previously served in several leadership roles for the Southwest UU Conference and the Mountain Desert District. Mark has served with Julie Sexton on the district board and on the staff of the district leadership school. Prior to Mark's work in ministry, he spent 20 years working in radio. Mark began playing guitar in his middle teens and often brings his guitar and includes singing in his sermons. Mark, welcome back to All People's Church. And now please settle comfortably for our musical prelude.
Now This day is a gift of love, a gift from God, a gift from life itself. Come, let us worship together, for this is the day we have been given, to live in, to love in, and in time to die in. Let us rejoice in our capacity to think, feel, hear, and understand. And let us rejoice in the promise and the possibility of this day.
We now invite you to rise in body or spirit for the chalice lighting, the opening hymn, and our spoken affirmation. And I'd like to thank Paul Schottman for being the fireman this morning. Our chalice lighting words were written by the Reverend Marjorie Montgomery, a former minister of this church. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and mysteries of this great gift. Please join now in singing our hymn of the month for November, number 16 in the gray hymnal, "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple." Please join me now in our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. And now with the young, please be seated. And with the young and the young of heart, like to join us now for the story for all ages.
Hello. How are you today? What do you think people want you to be? A T-Rex. Yeah, I kind of like that idea. Well, what do you think about T-Rexes? What about a T-Rex is special? They're big.
Yes.
They're strong.
Yes.
They growl.
No water.
Well, there's some other things too. But I want to tell you a story about one of those things that's big and strong and growls. Except this thing was convinced that it wasn't big, and that it wasn't strong, and that it wasn't fierce. You see, once there was a little tiger, and this is a story that I'm basing off of a story that comes out of a book by a guy named Chris Buice, and it's in his book called Pocket Full of Dreams. And if you're a parent or a grandparent and you want some stories to read to kids, this is a great one to get. It's a little blue book, and it's just got about 10 stories in it, but they're all really good. And this is one of them, called The Beautiful Tiger. And once there was a little tiger in the woods, a tiger in the forest, who got captured and taken away to, you wouldn't even call it a zoo. It was just a big cage, was tossed in there. And the guy brought him out water and put it down and put food down. and said, "You are such a miserable creature. I don't even know why I keep feeding you, why I keep giving you water. But I will, okay." And every time he'd come out and say, "Oh, there you are, that miserable little animal again." Well, the little tiger got bigger and bigger and bigger, bigger, to the point when he was full size, he barely fit in the cage. His nose could touch one side and his tail would miss the other side by about that much. Big, yeah. And he was in that little cage, and first a monkey came by. And the monkey said, "My, but you're a beautiful tiger." And he says, "No, I'm not. I'm a miserable thing. That's what I've been told my whole life." I said, "But no, you're a beautiful, strong tiger." No, I'm a miserable thing. I'm horrible." And the monkey went along. And one day the tiger was kind of looking at his own reflection in his water dish and said, "I'm not bad looking after all." And the guy who owned him, who put him in that cage, heard that and said, "Oh no, you are a miserable creature. You're a miserable creature. You're weak, you're ugly." But he kind of knew different. And another animal came by, maybe it was a T-Rex this time, and said, "Oh my, you're a very, 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 very beautiful tiger. You're not as beautiful as another T-Rex, but you're pretty close. You're strong. You're big." He says, "Oh no, I'm weak and pathetic." He said, "No, you're not." And again, he was kind of looking around and kind of feeling himself banging against the cage. He said, "I am pretty strong. I'm kind of strong." And the guy who kept him came out again and said, "Oh no, you're not. You're a weakling. You're pathetic. You're a miserable excuse for a creature." And pretty soon the tiger started feeling really bad again. And then one day, a lion went by. Now, in real life, lions and tigers don't really live in the same places, but in this world they do. And the lion said, "Well, you're just a beautiful tiger. I've never seen a more magnificent tiger than you." He said, "No, I'm a weakling. I'm a miserable creature. I am pathetic." He says, "No, you're not. What do you mean?" He says, "Oh, all I know is this cage. I just pace one way and turn around and pace the other, because that's all I've got the room to do." And the lion said, "Well, you are so strong that with one bat of your paw, you could open that door." He says, "No, I'm not. I'm a miserable creature." And he was told that again by the guy who kept him. Until one day, he started thinking about the things that the monkey and the T-Rex and the lion had told him, and said, "Well, maybe I am big. Maybe I am strong. Maybe I am powerful. Maybe I am beautiful." And about that time, he walked toward the edge of the cage where he'd always done it, but this time he hit the cage with his shoulder, and the door flew open. The door had never been locked. He'd just been told his whole life that he was a miserable creature, that he was weak and powerless, and had no idea of the strength that's within him. And what I want you to know about this place is we're not going to tell you you're weak. We're not going to tell you you're powerful. We're going to tell you you're strong. We're going to tell you you're beautiful. And we're going to tell you that the doors that you need to open, you can open yourself. Because most of them haven't been locked in the first place. And that's our story for today.
Church is to encourage all who gather there to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring human beings closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support this self-supporting church and its many ministries. It is our custom to share the undesignated cash offerings that are collected each week. We do this on a quarterly basis for a nonprofit or a charitable organization. Our current Share the Plate recipient is Jane's Due Process. From their website, the mission of Jane's Due Process is to help young people in Texas navigate parental consent laws and abortion bans to confidently access reproductive services. The offering will now be accepted. Will the ushers please come forward? Thank you for that magnificent performance, Katya. After that, our middle hymn is going to seem like a little bit of an anticlimax, but we will bravely sing it anyway. Our next hymn is number 170, We Are a Gentle, Angry People. At this time in our service, we pause to honor and to give time and attention to those things most important to us. We gather here for healing and for peace in our hearts and in the world, and honor our time together with shared stories and news from the congregation. Each week, there is a journal outside the entrance to the sanctuary where you can write a message of memory or hope. We honor these messages by lighting 3 candles here next to our chalice. Also, at any time during the service, you are welcome to come forward and light a candle in our meditation center here at the side of the chancel. Together from our Book of Memory and Hope, we include the following happy news. Paul Shatman is pleased to announce that his great-niece, Rachel Robbins, has been accepted into the Graduate School of Queen's College, Belfast, Northern Ireland, for the master's program in History and Conflict Resolution. And no doubt you will see her on MSNBC someday, Secretary of State announcing her run for president. Our meditation reading includes words from the Reverend Rebecca Ann Parker. You must answer this question. What will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. The choice to bless the world is more than an act of will. It is an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abound. Let us now pause for a few moments of quiet meditation to uphold and uplift the sorrows and celebrations, both spoken and unspoken among us. And then Misha and Katya will lift our hearts with music. That was lovely, Katya. We're going to preface the sermon this morning with a responsive reading from the Great Hymnal. It's number 591. I call that church free. I call that church free, which enters into covenant with the ultimate source of existence. It binds together families and generations, protecting against the idolatry of any human claim to absolute truth or authority. I call that church free, which brings individuals into a caring, trusting fellowship. It is open to insight and conscience from every source. It bursts through rigid tradition, giving rise to new and living language, to new and broader fellowship. The goal is the prophethood and priesthood of all believers, the one for the liberty of prophesying, the other for the ministry of healing. It aims to find unity in diversity under the promptings of the Spirit that bloweth where it listeth, in all things new.
Those are Adams. And I take those to heart. And actually, I could say just about everything that's happened today, I could just roll up to this point and say, I'm not going to say anything different than that, so just sit down and make sure we can get home for but I'm told the Cowboys are in the 3 o'clock slot, not the noon slot, so don't have to be in too much of a hurry getting out of here today. Years ago, I was the intern minister at All Souls Unitarian in Tulsa. And they have what's called a wayside pulpit. Maybe you have one too, I don't know. But that's a sign that sits out on the street, and it has pithy sayings that we put in there. Kind of like very shortened clips from the hymnal. But one of them I saw that year stuck with me. And I think about it nearly every week. I love it because it's from an icon of American history and an icon of religious history, Martin Luther King. The second reason I love it is it's kind of leading a place that you wouldn't expect a Baptist minister to go. It was a short statement. It says, prayer does not change things. Prayer changes people. People change things. Prayer doesn't change things. Prayer changes people. And I hate to break it to you, churches are the same way. Churches don't change things. People often wonder, how come we don't change this? How come we don't go do this? Because that isn't our function. Our function is to change each other so that we each go out into the world to bring the changes that we feel are necessary, that we feel are possible, and that we hope can bring a better future. The formula I've come up with to kind of describe that is the church exists to transform people who transform the world. We really just can't transform the world. And we can't really transform people. But maybe we can transform one little girl who sat here this morning. Perhaps we can transform someone who's come in the door who needed a quiet place, or needed a bit of sanity, or a bit of support, or to be around people who at least seem to care about them. And by changing that person, those people, they go forward and change the world. I kind of come to that particular formula. I really worked hard on that once upon a time. I spent a whole summer in my study leave coming up with this exact expression and all the details about what was going to be changed by who. And now I can't use it anymore because I can't read it. I've got it on a flash drive somewhere. I tried to find it so I could remind myself. Then I decided I wrote that 15 years ago. Maybe what we need people to do now aren't what was needed 15 years ago. Maybe what we need the world transformed into now wasn't what we needed 15 years ago. That, I think, is still pretty much true. But certainly the world has changed. But this whole idea about changing people who change the world, I want to set this up with a story that actually took place in Arlington. As I was preparing for ministry in about 1994, I went to a career counseling at a center over here in Arlington. It was myself and another UU student from the seminary I went to, Phillips Theological Seminary, both of us in Oklahoma. And there were two guys from the DFW area. One who ended up serving at Westside. I'm assuming that's West. It may not be. Sam Shaw. And another one was a guy who you wouldn't know, but he was a really, really intelligent guy. When we did the career counseling testing, the psychometrist came in and said, 3 of you guys are really bright. 1 of you is scary smart. And I was not the scary smart one, I promise you. I'm lucky if I'm pretty bright. But in visiting with this, he was talking about what he really wanted to do is he wanted to move Unitarian Universalism back to the Universalism of the 19th century. I said, well, not what I would do, but okay, so how are you doing that? Well, he said, there aren't any churches in the Dallas-Fort Worth area I can attend to let me do that. I said, really? Well, the district office is here. Maybe you can go down there and help out Connie and do some work there. Oh, no, they're not on my agenda. And so I sat there and I asked him, I said, how do you expect to change a movement when you don't get involved with the people? Transforming people who transform the world. He wanted to just, through gift of fiat, being able to change the world, the UU world. And it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Prayer doesn't change things. Prayer changes people. People change the world. So what do we want it to become? What do we want us to become? Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you some things here. And once upon a time, like I said, I worked this out in fine detail to make sure all the parts balanced, that linked to this and this linked to that, and they all supported each other. And since then, I've decided that everything's not really that neat. It's not that tidy. But still, we seek transformation. So when we seek transformation of each other today, and this is one that I certainly have changed since 15 years ago, I want to say the first thing we want you to be, and we want to help each other to become, and we want our children to become, is more discerning. More so than ever, you have to be able to look at a situation and wade through the chaff to try and get to the precious grain that is offering sustenance. Whether that's in politics, or religion, or social issues, we're all faced with so much misinformation, or misleading information, or useless information. But how do we determine what is significant? We don't do it individually. We do it in community. That was the point of the reading from James Luther Adams, that we bring these things together in community. We use the church to bring us along those lines. So the first thing I want to say that we want to become is more discerning. The second thing I want to tell you that I think we want each other to be is more inspired. It used to be, of course, that you could just cite a couple of passages from the Bible and people would leave sufficiently inspired. Now, I'm not sure that's ever worked very well with us, but there's something to it. But where do we draw inspiration from? Again, drawing on that sense of discernment. We run into conversations with people and we draw inspiration. Hearing such a heart-rending version of How Great Thou Art today was amazing. That is inspiring. That lifts people up. Not that they're going to go out and sing that, but they're going to take behind it the Spirit, the inspiration being lifted up, to go into the world filled with Spirit. Because that is a thing which runs low pretty quickly. In church, in this church, in Unitarian Universalist churches, that's why we, in some ways, are a Whitman sampler of religious traditions. Pulling a little bit of Judaism and a little bit of Hinduism and a little bit of Buddhism and a little bit of Taoism and a lot of science and some literature and pulling them together. Because we know that we can find inspiration and we can share inspiration there. Because what we're inspiring is ourselves with other people. And the third specific thing I want to tell you that we want people transformed into is people who are more committed to sustainability. And that's a little more mundane thing. Somebody once told me the only you sin is not recycling. He may be right, I'm not sure. But we want to think about the world in a sustainable manner. Because for so much of us, and so for almost all of human history, all we've tried to be caring about is what's right in front of us and affecting me and mine. And if you are discerning and you're inspired, and you realize that there's more to sustainability than just me and mine. It's not just simply living so that others can simply live. That's a piece of it, but it's not all of it. So all these things come together. Now, I could have inserted 3 or 4 different things in there, and that's the whole point of this, is that it's not a set list of things. This is not a set list of checklists. This is not a checklist. We've done that, okay, well, now we're going on. Back to discernment. That's one of the reasons why, as a tradition, we've invested so much of our energy and time into sexuality education for children and adults. We need them to be able to discern what is good touch and bad touch. We need them to discern what are base human drives when I encounter them, and do I want to go with them or do I need to do something else? Because my experience is that most teenagers, if you haven't given them any alternative when those sexual drives arise, they're going to act on them. And there's nothing wrong with acting on them if you're doing it in a discerning way, in a way that's going to lead you to be more inspired and inspiring in your life and live your life more fully. So if we do those things, plus there's dozens of other things that I could have thrown in there. And if I preach this sermon again, which I might, it'll be different things. It'll be different things because it's not a set checklist. But what do we want the world to be? Transforming people who transform the world. Well, if we could all agree on that, there'd be no problems. But we can't all. Even in a group like this, I doubt that we could come to a full agreement. It's an issue as simple as what's going on. Yes, simple. An issue as complex as what's going on in Israel and Palestine. There are some people who say Israel's in full rights to do what they did. Some they say they had no right to do that. And some of those opinions may be sitting here today with us. Maybe. But what are we going to transform the world into? The first thing I'm going to tell you we want to transform the world into is something my mother told me never to do. I remember as a teenager and even as a 20-something talking to my mother and saying, it's not fair. And she said, who told you the world was going to be fair? And she was right. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't be fair. That doesn't mean I shouldn't commit myself to making a more fair world. A more equitable world. Another one of those things in that category we want the world to be is more equitable. I've given up on saying that it's going to be an equal world. The difference between equality and equity is that equity is something that is inherently going to be out of balance, but you're raising it in one area to offset a deficit in another. I need more assistance because I can't see. Does it cost more to have me in the community? Yeah. I need to have bus lines. I need to have well-marked areas that I can travel and traverse in. I need things other people don't. But everybody's got that. Everybody's got something that they need equity in, the equitability. Another way of thinking about equity is that some people get more and some other don't. Is that when you buy a house and you pay payments in it, it's the equity. You've paid into it. Eventually you're going to take it out of there. And there have been people who have unfairly been excluded from that, and we have to find ways to use equity to rise that bar of fairness to where they're closer to what's normal. The third thing that I think I want us to transform the world into is to a place that is more forgiving. I make mistakes. I suspect all of you make mistakes. Some of us have made mistakes that perhaps we can never forgive ourselves for. But the world needs to encourage us to be more forgiving of ourselves and of others. Again, in that category of who told you the world was going to be fair. I'm not an African American person, so I didn't have to sat down and have the black child conversation. But I did have a conversation with my son as he was getting to be 13, 14 years old. Said, the world has changed. When I was growing up, you were given a little bit of leeway. You know, you screw up a little bit, it's okay. We've gotten into a zero-tolerance world. And I don't think it's fair to be trying to raise our kids in a world that has zero tolerance for mistakes, those things. We need to find a way to put forgiveness back in the world. And we do that by forgiving others, but also by forgiving ourselves. And if we had that fairness, what is fairness? Well, sometimes it's justice, but justice is such a complex word. Because you can't have justice. If you have justice without compassion, you have nothing at all, except a set of rules, or a wall that you run into, or a cage that you toss a tiger into. Transforming people who transform the world. One more little quote I want to give you, because this is saying everything that I've said up until now. And it comes from the prophet Micah in the Hebrew Scriptures. And it is one of my favorite passages in Christian Scripture and Jewish Scripture. For what does the Lord require of thee? But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. Now, I change it. I don't say, what does the Lord expect of thee? What do we expect of each other? We know what is good. To act justly. To love mercy, forgiveness, opportunity. And to walk humbly, sustainably. Looking out for others as much as we look out for ourselves. And today, folks, I'm telling you, that's a big piece of why you have this church. That's a big piece of why we are here together. We are here because we know prayer doesn't change things. And we know church can't change things. But prayer can change us, and prayer can change the church, and the church can change the world by changing people. So what is expected of us? But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly. I think that's a good enough religious prescription for any day. Amen.
That was truly inspirational. Please rise as you are willing or able for our closing hymn, number 121, We'll Build a Land. Our chalice is finishing words often Dr. Morgenstern. When we take fire from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. And so we extinguish our chalice, but we take its light and its warmth with us, multiplying their power by all of our lives and sharing it with the world.
I'd like to sing you a benediction. Let there be light to drive away the darkness. Let there be wisdom to shine on the unknown. Let there be love to heal our aloneness. Let each of us be a light for one another. May you take your light into the world and share it with those who are in need of hope. Amen.